The first shows that I worked was down here, man, around Houston.
Remember what
all over
locations
Texas.
you worked here in Texas?
Well, I worked Houston. I worked.
For decades, Graceland has been treated almost like a shrine. Millions of fans have walked its halls, marveled at its rooms, and stood outside the gates hoping to catch a glimpse of the king's world. But one area of the mansion remained closed off, tucked above the familiar rooms and hidden away in silence: the attic. Few even knew what was up there, and fewer still had ever seen it. For years, rumors swirled among Presley devotees. Some claimed the attic was just clutter. Others believed it was sealed for safety. But in truth, its contents were far more significant than anyone dared to imagine. When the attic was finally opened during a preservation effort, what emerged wasn't just old belongings. It was a time capsule of Elvis Presley's private world. Letters that revealed torment, photographs that stripped away the glitter of fame, recordings where Elvis spoke his rawest thoughts. This wasn't the king the world adored. This was Elvis, unguarded, fragile, and shockingly human. And what they found inside changes everything we thought we knew about him. For years, visitors to Graceland have been guided through the mansion's most iconic spaces: the jungle room, with its shag carpets, the music room where gold records line the walls, the meditation garden where Elvis rests. But never once was the attic mentioned on the tour. The guides never pointed upward, never even acknowledged that above the carefully curated exhibits was a sealed and forbidden space. To outsiders, this secrecy fueled wild speculation. Fans whispered in hushed tones about what might be hidden there. Some believed Elvis had tucked away a vault of unreleased recordings, song drafts, and handwritten lyrics too personal to ever see the light of day. Others imagined more sinister possibilities: evidence of his struggles with health, or documents the Presley estate never wanted exposed. Insiders offered different explanations. One former staff member claimed that Priscilla herself ordered the attic to remain off-limits after Elvis's death, believing the items inside were too painful for Lisa Marie to discover as a child. Another insisted that Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, warned the family never to disturb the attic because it contained reminders of the king's decline. Yet, the official line from the Graceland Foundation was far simpler. The attic was unstable, unsafe for visitors, and lacked climate control to preserve sensitive items. But if that were true, why not at least catalog the contents or store them safely elsewhere? Why keep them locked above the house, untouched, for nearly half a century? Some believe it was because the attic was more than just a storage space. It was where Elvis himself placed the fragments of his life that he didn't want displayed for the world. He had closets full of costumes for the stage, but the attic held what was left behind when the lights went out. It was as though the Presley family knew that whatever was in those boxes was never meant to be part of the public Elvis Presley story. Keeping it sealed meant preserving the myth of the king, the dazzling performer, the unshakable icon. Opening it meant risking the truth of a man who struggled with loneliness, who leaned too heavily on prescription drugs, who feared the very legacy he would one day leave behind. And so, for decades, the attic was simply ignored, its door locked, its secrets quietly aging in the shadows above the mansion. It became the one part of Graceland even Elvis's most devoted followers could not touch, a ghostly chamber hanging above the tours, carrying with it the weight of unanswered questions. But the silence couldn't last forever. Eventually, curiosity, preservation, and history's demand for answers forced the attic open. And what lay waiting inside stunned even those who thought they knew Elvis better than anyone. When archivists first stepped into the attic, their flashlights fell not on glittering costumes or stacks of gold records, but on boxes, dozens of them, dusty and untouched since the 1970s. Inside were letters, countless letters, handwritten by Elvis himself in ink that had faded but not disappeared. These weren't fan letters. These were Elvis's private writing, never meant for the world's eyes. Some were folded carefully and placed in envelopes addressed to Priscilla, but never sent. Others were scattered pages torn from yellow legal pads, filled with the restless scribbles of a man who could not find peace in the silence of night. Reading them was like hearing Elvis's voice whisper from the grave. In one, He wrote about lying awake in the early hours of the morning, haunted by the roar of crowds that still rang in his head long after the concert ended. The cheering fade, one note said, but the silence is louder. Another revealed how deeply he feared losing touch with Priscilla, even after their separation. "I still see you in every room," he confessed in a shaky hand, "but I don't know if you see me anymore." There were letters to Lisa Marie as well, simple, heartfelt notes he never gave her, perhaps because she was too young to understand them at the time. One, written on hotel stationery, read, "You'll never know how much your little smile saves me, baby girl. Don't let this world take it away from you like it has from me." But among the tender words lay darker confessions. Some pages revealed Elvis's growing frustration with the people around him. He wrote about feeling trapped by handlers who controlled his schedule, about his distrust of the doctors who prescribed him endless pills, about his worry that even his closest friends were staying for the money and not the man. In one particularly haunting line, he admitted, "Sometimes I wonder if they'd notice if I was gone, or just the shows they'd lose." These writings painted a picture the public had never seen. To the outside world, Elvis was larger than life, an untouchable legend. But here, in his own words, he was just a man wrestling with heartbreak, paranoia, and the crushing weight of his own fame. These weren't the words of the king of rock and roll. They were the desperate prayers of Elvis Presley, the man from Tupelo, Mississippi, who still longed for love, for trust, and for a peace that fame had stolen from him. The discovery of these forgotten letters did more than fill pages of history. It cracked open the myth. They showed that Elvis knew his kingdom was fragile, and behind every dazzling smile, there was a heart weighed down by regret and fear. As the archivists dug deeper into the dusty boxes stacked in the attic, they stumbled across a discovery that felt even more intimate than the letters. Photographs, dozens of shoe boxes, albums, and even loose envelopes were stuffed with snapshots of Elvis's life, many of them Polaroids taken quickly and tucked away without much thought. Unlike the polished publicity stills and carefully staged portraits the world had always seen, these photographs captured a side of Elvis that was rarely exposed. There were images of him in quiet moments at Graceland, sitting in his pajamas at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, his hair messy and his expression far removed from the electrifying stage persona. Others showed him sprawled on the living room floor, playing with Lisa Marie, his face lit up in laughter as she climbed on his back. These pictures revealed a tenderness, a warmth, and a father's devotion that fame often overshadowed. But not all the photographs carried joy. Some of the Polaroids, believed to have been taken in the mid-1970s, showed Elvis looking noticeably thinner, his eyes tired, his posture slouched. In one particularly jarring image, he is seated on the edge of his bed, surrounded by pill bottles on the nightstand, staring at the floor with a look of exhaustion that spoke volume. These photographs shocked even those who had studied Elvis's decline for decades, because they provided visual confirmation of just how deeply his struggles had consumed him in private. Beyond the family moments and the troubling images were also candid shots from the road, photos snapped by friends or members of his entourage. Backstage Polaroids showed him in sequined jumpsuits, but without the blinding stage lights, the rhinestones looked duller, and so did the smile on his face. There were also photos of Elvis in hotel rooms, sometimes surrounded by friends, other times completely alone, sitting in silence with a guitar resting on his lap, as if caught between who he once was and who the world demanded him to be. Some images were even more personal, photos of women, companions who were part of his inner circle for a brief time. These pictures, never intended for public consumption, stripped away the myth of Elvis as an untouchable icon and reminded us he was still a man, flawed, lonely, and searching for connection wherever he could find it. For fans, the release of such photographs would be both heartbreaking and illuminating. They showed Elvis as no one had seen him before, not on stage, not in interviews, not even in carefully edited documentaries. These were the moments in between, the fragments of a private life pieced together in faded Polaroids and forgotten shoeboxes. And in them, the king of rock and roll was not a king at all, but a man desperately clinging to the fragments of a normal life as fame consumed him from the inside out. Among the most startling discoveries in the attic were a set of reel-to-reel tapes, stacked neatly in a worn leather case with labels marked only by dates. For decades, rumors had circulated among Presley insiders that Elvis often recorded himself late at night, capturing fragments of songs, half-finished lyric, or even candid confession meant for no one but himself. Now, in the dusty attic, those whispers proved true. The tapes, though fragile, still carried his voice, raw, unfiltered, and achingly human. When played, they revealed Elvis speaking alone in the early hours of the morning, his words drifting between rants, prayers, and fleeting melodies. On one tape dated 1974, he could be heard strumming a guitar quietly, mumbling lyrics to a song that had never been released. His voice cracked with exhaustion, but even in that weakened state, the unmistakable power of the king resonated through the static. Between songs, Elvis spoke candidly into the microphone. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," he admitted in a weary tone. "Everybody thinks I'm indestructible, but I ain't. Sometimes I feel like I'm dying on that stage." On another tape, his voice took on a frustrated edge as he spoke about the pressures placed on him. "They don't care about me, man. They care about the show. Long as the tickets sell, nobody gives a damn if I'm falling apart." These recordings laid bare the loneliness of a man trapped by his own fame. Some tapes were filled with paranoia, Elvis questioning whether those closest to him were truly loyal. He named no names, but his words carried a haunting bitterness. You start to wonder who's your friend and who's just waiting for the money to run out. Yet in between the darkness were glimpses of the creative fire that had made him legendary. On several reels, Elvis experimented with melodies, humming into the mic, working through chord progressions, chasing inspiration, even when his health and spirit were in decline. These recordings, though unfinished, offered a haunting reminder that the heart of a true artist beat within him until the very end. For historians, the tapes are priceless, an unfiltered diary of sound capturing the real Elvis Presley behind closed doors. For fans, they are devastating. To hear the king speak so openly about his fears, his regrets, and his collapsing world is to strip away the last layers of myth and confront the man who lived beneath the crown. It is one thing to read about Elvis's struggles in biographies or tabloids, but it is another to hear his voice, cracking with pain and honesty, preserved forever on magnetic tape. These reels from the attic were not meant for anyone's ears but his own. Yet their discovery has forced the world to listen to Elvis Presley in a way it never has before. Raw, broken, vulnerable, and more human than ever imagined. As the boxes in the attic were carefully sifted through, one discovery chilled the archivists more than any photograph or letter ever could. A locked metal container tucked deep in the corner, its edges rusted with age. Inside was a grim collection that confirmed what had long been whispered about Elvis's final years. The container held prescription bottles, medical notes, and documents that revealed the sheer extent of the king's reliance on medication. Dozens of pill bottles, some still half full, bore his name, Elvis Aaron Presley, alongside dates ranging from the early to mid-1970s. The labels told their own harrowing story. Sedatives, stimulants, painkillers, sleeping aids, antidepressants, the cocktail of drugs prescribed to him was staggering. Each was signed off by a doctor, some legitimate, others infamous for giving Elvis whatever he asked for. One prescription warned, in bold letters, "Take only as directed, risk of dependency." Another, written just weeks before his death, carried a chilling note. "Patient must reduce dosage immediately." It was clear Elvis's health was spiraling, and his doctors knew it. Alongside the bottles were handwritten notes believed to be from concerned physicians, desperately urging him to slow down. One memo, scrawled in haste, read, "You must stop this now, or it will end badly." Yet Elvis either ignored the warnings or felt powerless to change course. These documents revealed a tragic reality. The king was fully aware of the risks, but trapped in a cycle he could not escape. He relied on medication to sleep, to perform, and even to face the crushing pressure of being Elvis Presley. The discovery of these items in the attic was more than just confirmation of addiction. It was evidence of a battle he was losing every single day. To the outside world, Elvis seemed untouchable, a force of nature who could electrify an audience with a single note. But these pill bottles and warnings painted a far darker picture. They showed a man fighting against his own body, his own mind, and a medical system that too often enabled his decline. One of the most haunting documents was a small, folded note in Elvis's handwriting, tucked among the prescription. It contained only a few words: "I just need some peace." Those words, written on a scrap of paper stained with age, encapsulated the torment of a man whose fame had become a prison. For fans, the addict's medical evidence was devastating because it forced them to see Elvis not as a superhuman performer, but as a fragile soul burdened by dependence, isolation, and despair. The prescriptions told a story of desperation. The notes revealed doctors' frantic attempts to intervene, and the silence of that locked box testified to a secret the Presley family had tried to protect for decades. More than any rumor, more than any tabloid headline, these artifacts made one fact heartbreakingly clear. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was a man fighting a losing battle behind closed doors, his pain hidden away in a dusty attic until time finally forced it into the light. Amid the boxes of prescriptions, haunting photographs, and unfinished tapes, the archivists came across something softer, something that reminded everyone that Elvis Presley, despite the legend, was still a father and a man who held his family close to his heart. In one corner of the attic sat several small boxes, carefully labeled in Elvis's own handwriting. Lisa's Thing. Inside were childhood drawings, scribbled crayon masterpieces of stick figures and animals that any parent would proudly treasure. Some pages were marked with simple messages: "I love you, Daddy," written in a child's uneven scrawl. Elvis had kept them all, folded gently, and placed alongside birthday cards and little trinkets that Lisa Marie had given him. These fragile items, untouched for decades, told a story far removed from the glamorous world of sold-out arenas and flashing cameras. They revealed a father who cherished the small, ordinary moments, the laughter of a child, the innocence of play, the comfort of knowing his daughter's love was real in a world where so much else felt false. One particularly moving discovery was a set of baby clothes, still neatly folded, with faint notes pinned to them. Elvis had written the dates when Lisa wore each outfit, as though trying to hold on to a timeline that fame so often stole from him. There were even tiny shoes preserved in their original box, the kind of keepsake any doting parent might save, but which felt extraordinary when tied to a man the world viewed as untouchable. Alongside these items were family photographs that never made it to magazines or press releases, candid snapshots of Lisa climbing into her father's lap, Elvis reading to her at bedtime, and even a few silly pictures of them making faces at the camera. They were not the images of a superstar. They were the images of a dad, completely absorbed in the joy of his child. For all the chaos that consumed his later years, these keepsakes revealed that Elvis never lost sight of what mattered most. He was flawed, he was struggling, but he was also deeply human, holding on to the simple treasures of fatherhood as if they were lifelines in the storm. What struck those who uncovered the boxes was the contrast between the darkness of the attic's other contents and the tenderness preserved here. On one side were prescriptions and notes that spoke of despair. On the other, a child's drawing that simply read, "Happy Birthday, Daddy." These artifacts showed the duality of Elvis Presley, the king adored by millions, and the father who clung to family as his world crumbled. For fans, the discovery of these family memories is perhaps the most bittersweet revelation of all, because it proves that even as fame consumed him, even as loneliness and addiction pulled him down, Elvis's love for his daughter remained constant. The man the world called the King was, in his own eyes, simply a father trying to hold on to fleeting moments of happiness, boxed up carefully in an attic, preserved as though he knew one day the world would need to see not just the legend, but the man who lived for his little girl's smile. The greatest mystery surrounding the attic isn't just what was found inside, it's why it remained sealed for nearly half a century. For decades, family members, estate managers, and preservationists alike insisted there was nothing of significance in that hidden space, dismissing it as mere storage. But the discoveries, the letters, the photographs, the tapes, the prescriptions, and the family keepsakes tell a very different story. To understand why it stayed locked, one must look at the delicate balance the Presley estate has always walked between protecting Elvis's image and revealing his truth. After his death in 1977, the world mourned not just a man, but a myth. Elvis was no longer just a musician. He had become an immortal cultural icon. Graceland quickly transformed into a shrine, a place where fans could step inside the life of the king. But what the world was allowed to see was carefully chosen. The rooms were preserved in bright, polished detail. The gold records gleamed on the walls, and every corner radiated the story of a superstar. The attic, however, was different. It was not a curated exhibit, but a raw vault of reality, evidence of his struggles, his addictions, his doubts, and his most fragile moments. For a family still grieving, exposing those secrets would not only have been painful, it would have risked dismantling the very myth that kept Elvis alive in the hearts of millions. Priscilla, in particular, was believed to be fiercely protective of what Elvis left behind. Those who knew her have said she wanted Lisa Marie to remember her father not as a broken man, but as the dazzling figure who had once captured the world's heart. By keeping the attic locked, she shielded her daughter from the darkness hidden inside. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, also had reasons for silence. Having watched his son's health decline and knowing firsthand the battles Elvis faced, Vernon was determined that the king's public image remain intact. He understood that fans wanted a hero, not a tragic tale. Allowing access to the attic would have shattered that illusion. Even the Graceland estate itself had a financial motive. The legend of Elvis Presley was not just emotional, it was an empire. Revealing too much of the pain behind the myth could have weakened the aura that drew millions to Graceland year after year. It was easier, safer, and more profitable to let the attic remain forgotten, its contents gathering dust, while the story of the king was told in brighter colors. And so, for decades, the attic was never mentioned, never explored, never touched. Those who managed the estate likely believed that sealing it away was an act of mercy for the Presley family, for Elvis's memory, and perhaps even for the millions of fans who preferred the legend to the truth. But time has a way of demanding answers. And eventually, preservation required that every part of Graceland be assessed, even the rooms long ignored. When the attic was opened, its secrets finally spilled into the light. And in doing so, they raised a painful but unavoidable question. Was hiding the truth an act of love or an act of fear? With the attic finally opened and its contents revealed, the story of Elvis Presley can no longer be told the same way. For generations, the king of rock and roll has been remembered as the electrifying performer who changed music forever. The man who shook his hips on national television, sold out arenas around the world, and left behind a catalog of songs that still echo through time. But the attic has forced the world to confront the other side of the story, the side that was hidden in dust and silence above Graceland's ceiling. The letters uncovered show a man plagued by loneliness, regret, and fear, despite being adored by millions. The photographs stripped away the glitter of fame, revealing Elvis as vulnerable, exhausted, and deeply human. The reel-to-reel tapes let us hear his voice in its rawest form, confessing the torment he endured in the final years of his life. The prescriptions and medical warnings confirmed the battle with dependency that had long been whispered about, but never truly seen so plainly. And tucked among the shadows were also treasures of light, drawings from Lisa Marie, baby clothes, notes, and photographs that showed Elvis's greatest joy was not the stage, but being a father. Taken together, these discoveries reshaped the legacy of Elvis Presley into something far more complicated, but also far more real. He was not an untouchable king seated on a golden throne. He was a man who struggled, who made mistakes, who wrestled with demons, and who desperately longed for peace in a world that never let him rest. For some fans, these revelations are heartbreaking, stripping away the myth they cherished. For others, they make Elvis more relatable, more human, and perhaps even more admirable for the battles he faced. The attic's secrets prove that behind the jumpsuits, the limousines, and the screaming fans was a soul both fragile and brilliant. crushed by the weight of being Elvis Presley. In many ways, this discovery has given us two Elvises: the legend, who will forever reign in the annals of music history, and the man whose humanity was hidden away in boxes for decades. The question now is how the world chooses to remember him. Do we cling to the polished myth of the king, or do we embrace the truth of a man who lived in shadows as often as he stood in the spotlight? Perhaps the greatest tribute we can give Elvis Presley is not to worship him as flawless, but to honor him as human, someone who gave the world everything he had, even when it was breaking him apart. The attic of Graceland has spoken, and its voice is clear. Elvis Presley's story is no longer just about fame, fortune, and tragedy. It is about the man behind the crown, the father who saved drawings, the artist who sang into the night, the patient who cried out for peace. His legacy has not been diminished by these discoveries. It has been rewritten, deepened, and made eternal in a way no myth ever could. And now, with the attic open at last, the world can finally see Elvis Presley not only as the king, but as the man he always was beneath the crown.